So Saturn, the planet of structure, karma, and long-term growth, is entering the very first sign of the Zodiac, a fiery, bold new beginning that will shape personal and collect trajectories in powerful ways.
Saturn is, again, the lord of karma, and karma is not bad always. Saturn will bring rewards when you've worked hard for something and earned it with your blood, sweat, and tears. You kind of cut corners or didn't really master something, then he kind of schools you. And Saturn comes and kind of smacks you on the hand and goes,
So Saturn's basically Mr. Miyagi.
And Mr. Miyagi is also, in true Saturn fashion, breaking down his ego.
The masculine needs a code of honor.
Saturn goes well with partnership. Well, this is a time for beginning. And what we begin is going to come with us.
Well, hello there and welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. Today we have a very special guest, one who has appeared on this platform from the very beginning of Astrology Hub, almost 10 years ago now. Astrologer, mythologist, teacher, and spiritual guide, Divine Harmony, joining us for a deep dive into one of the most pivotal transits of this year and really the years to follow. And this is Saturn moving into Aries. So Saturn, the planet of structure, karma, and long-term growth, is entering the very first sign of the Zodiac, a fiery, bold new beginning that will shape personal and collective trajectories in powerful ways. And we're going to explore what those ways are. So we're going to cover, what does it mean when the planet of discipline steps into the sign of independence, instinct, and action, how this looks in the sky, and why this matters, the Sabian symbol of 0 degrees Aries and what this means, and what is this shift leading us toward in February of 2026. So together we will explore how this transit can help us build new inner and outer foundations and take more conscious responsibility for the fire we carry. Harmony is also going to be our inner circle astrologer guide for the Leo lunation, so coming up this summer. Harmony, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you here once again.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, well, let's start with the forensics, the logistics. Talk to us about dates, when Saturn is officially moving into Aries, how long it's been in Pisces, and then, as we're moving towards the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune, just give us kind of the break.
Yeah. So I wrote the dates down so I don't get them wrong. So May 24th, Saturn ingresses into 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Aries at 11:35 p.m. Eastern time. So adjust for your time zone. And he just dips into Aries. He spends about 2.5 years in a sign. So he was in Pisces for 2.5 years. But as he transitions from one sign to another, there's a back and forth thing that happens. So there is, in the case of Pisces and Aries, he'll go retrograde July 13th at 1 degree 56 minutes of Aries. Interestingly, 9 days before that, Neptune stations retrograde at 2 degrees 10 minutes of Aries. So they will be 14 minutes from their conjunction, but the conjunction's not till February 2026. So Saturn goes retrograde, goes back into Pisces September 1st, stations direct November 27th of this year, 2025, at 25 degrees 9 minutes of Pisces, and then spends his last part of his time through Pisces till February 13th of next year, 2026, moves into Aries for good, and then 7 days later co-joins Neptune at 0 degrees 45 minutes of Aries, right on the Aries point. And he will stay in Aries till he starts to ingress into Taurus, April 12th of 2028.
Okay, so this May 24th ingress into Aries is the first time? Okay, yeah. And when we have a repeat transit, where they're going over the same degree, is it the first time they move into the new sign that we see the most, or is it the second time or the last time?
Well, so when he first goes over it, it's his first time transiting from Omega, last degree of the whole tropical zodiac, 30 Pisces, to Alpha, 0 Aries. But then when he goes retrograde, he'll do it backwards. So he'll be moving from Alpha to Omega. Mm-hmm. And then when he goes direct, he will do that thing he did the first time, one last time. But the transition going over this area of the sky, again, from our perspective, because planets don't actually stop and go backwards. It's from our Earth-based perspective. He's at 29 Pisces at this point. And then when he goes over into Aries and then stations retrograde at 156, then he'll go from 156 Aries all the way back to 2509 Pisces. And then he'll go over that whole area one last time. And then.
Okay. So if Saturn spends 2.5 years in a sign, we're having an ingress of Saturn into a new sign every 2.5 years. Why is this one so important?
Because it's the Aries point. Because it is in tropical astrology, 0 Aries is tied to the spring equinox from the northern hemisphere perspective. So we have, tropical astrology is very much about the Earth-Sun relationship and the seasons. So 0 Aries is the first day of spring, and 0 Cancer is summer solstice, highest point of the sun in the sky. 0 Libra is autumnal equinox, when the sun is, going to start to head to the dark of the sun. And then winter solstice, 0 Capricorn, is, of course, the lowest point of the sun and the rebirth of the sun. So 0 Aries is a very important starting point. It's the starting point of the tropical zodiac. 0 Aries in tropical astrology as the equinox point is how we calculate the ages. So in the 26,000 year cycle, they're looking at the equinox points, 0 Aries and 0 Libra, and where they are and how they move very slowly, 26,000 years. So I do these solar gate calls, and for spring equinox, I call it the gate of resurrection. It's the resurrection of the sun from, the depths of winter. And 0 Aries has that resurrection energy, that new beginning, that starting point. It's like the horse running out of the gate. It's like starting something. And so to have the last of the visible planets, Saturn, the Lord of Karma, the Father of Time, the planet of, mastery, but also manifestation, bringing things into form, crossing this very pivotal degree is like a big deal. And then to have Neptune co-joining it next year is just like, okay, we are in an important time.
Let's break it down a little bit. Talk to us a little bit more about Saturn, what it means, what this is bringing up in our lives, especially as it's over the 0 point.
So Saturn is, again, the Lord of Karma, and karma is not bad always. I mean, sometimes people think it's just bad, but karma is essentially what's happening now as a result of what was done before. And that before could have been what you did last week, last year, 10 years ago, or 10 lifetimes, right? And so Saturn will bring rewards when you've worked hard for something and earned it with your blood, sweat, and tears, which is what you got to do with Saturn. But if you kind of cut corners or didn't really master something, then he kind of schools you. He's one of the 2 teacher planets or guru planets. So Jupiter is the other one. And Jupiter is more like, I call him the Santa Claus planet. He like gives you gifts and, gives you opportunities. Saturn comes and kind of smacks you on the hand and goes, can't do that. You're cutting corners. And I have this theory, although I don't know how to prove it, but I think our Jupiter was our Saturn in previous lifetimes. And then we learned it. We graduated that lesson. And now it's our gift, and that's why it comes easy. And then Saturn is what we're working on now. That will be the Jupiter maybe in future lifetimes when we've mastered it. So he teaches us lessons, but he's the planet of get real, deal with the foundation, deal with reality. I also like to call him the great pruning shears. So he is a planet of growth, but it's growth by pruning. Like if you're a gardener, you would maybe understand that. Like there's times when your plants need to be pruned in order for greater growth to happen. And if you don't, they could die or something could have happened to them. And so Saturn's like that, like it's not a silver spoon in the mouth energy. It's not the big Jupiterian, like, here's your gifts from Santa Claus or from past lifetimes. And it's just easy. Saturn is work. And Saturn has a very long-term vision. So it's like, I'm doing this hard work now, and I might not feel the reward right now, but I will next year or in 2.5 years at the end of this Saturn, in Aries transit. Or even sometimes, like, depending on your own personal chart, like the whole cycle of Saturn is 30 years. And so there are times in which you're doing something at a particular part of Saturn's cycle, and then 14 to 15 years later, at the half cycle, the opposition, is when what you seeded comes to fruition, like the full moon, like the new moon is this point here, but in Saturn's cycle, it's going to take 14 to 15 years to get to the full moon phase of a Saturn cycle. So you've got like the long vision with Saturn, and you got to think that way. You got to know that, like, okay, this isn't a quick and easy thing. This, yeah.
My daughter Sophia and I are watching the Karate Kid series, like the old school one. And Mr. Miyagi has him do all this work. He has to paint, he has to hammer the nails into the wood. He has to like wax the cars, but the whole time he's doing this, he's kind of complaining. He's a little teenage boy, but Mr. Miyagi is training him for competition and for life, because the movements that he's doing are getting him ready for the movements he's going to need to do. But it feels like work. It's not totally clear why he's doing it. But when you're talking, I'm thinking, oh, so Saturn's basically Mr. Miyagi.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And Mr. Miyagi is also in true Saturn fashion, breaking down his ego.
Yes.
Like he has to surrender to this higher authority, this teacher, and not just do what he wants, which is definitely one of the teachings with Saturn and Aries, because Aries is the first sign. And I in Foundations of Astrology, I teach how like each of the signs correlates with a stage of human development. And so Aries is the baby being born.
Right.
And it's like, here I am, but like that baby small child doesn't have mastery or ability to, it's all about the desires when you're a baby. I'm hungry, I need to sleep, I need my diaper changed. When I'm laughing, I'm full-blooded laughing. When I'm crying, I'm full throttle crying. And Saturn is all about reining that in. It's like, grounding down boundaries, limits, restriction. And Aries is not a sign that's into that.
There's no instant gratification, right? It's not about instant gratification with Saturn. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Aries. So we have this beautiful description you just gave us of Saturn.
Yes.
0 degrees Aries. And we just talked about the baby, but what else? Like what other things will that be bringing up for us?
Well, Aries is the pioneer, the one who starts. Like everybody else is sitting on the sidelines going, maybe you should go first. Maybe you should go first. Aries is like, I'll do it. The first one out of the gate. And that whole being in the moment energy makes sense when you think of Aries and his manifestation as like a warrior on the battlefield. Like when you're on the battlefield, you better not be thinking about your argument with your wife last night or what you're having for dinner tonight. You have to be in the present moment. Otherwise, you could get killed. So Aries has that present moment capacity. It's, has a beautiful quality to it. One of the things I personally teach and study excessively is mythology, and especially ancient mythology, like pre-patriarchal. And I know like Mars and Aries are often called like the god of bloodlust, and he's just always ready for the battle. But there's an ancient energy of Aries where he was seen as the protector and defender of the crops and of pestilence and disease. So he like kept people safe with the food of nourishment, but also from illness and, locusts or whatever. And then he also has an energy as a sacred protector and defender of the feminine and of innocence and purity. And there's different stories. Like I remember I did a whole study on the gods who, and trigger warning, like just the gods who have raped because it's all throughout Greek and Roman myth. I mean, it's like really a lot. And he's the one that either hasn't done any or has done the least. One of them, it was a Vestal virgin who was pregnant, and it's thought that she said he was the father because death was live burial if you had sex as a Vestal virgin in patriarchy. So she said it was a god and it protected her. Anyhow, but he doesn't have all these excessive stories of that. It is said that women willingly slept with him. He didn't have to force them. And then he also is the only god that I could find that stood up to rape. His own daughter got accosted and he killed the man. So Aries actually has this amazing energy of protecting the feminine. And the land and the crops you can see as an aspect of the mother and Mother Earth. So he's protecting and guarding her. So there's a beautiful, like sacred divine masculine energy to Aries that I think we need to fully reclaim. And so, Saturn in Aries can be about the disciplining and mastering over this Aries archetypal energy, the shadow, rage, anger, conflict, dominance, but also the mastery of the higher octave of like sacred protector, defender, the one who's willing to take a stand, the one who's willing to act on what he knows is true, or act on or from integrity, not react, but act.
That resonates so deeply. It really does. I mean, and Aries being the one who is willing to protect and defend what is innocent and pure. And I think that personally, I think if the masculine had that orientation discussed and brought forth more, then they could be more proud of that natural instinct. To protect, to provide, to yes, be willing to act on behalf and in defense of what cannot do that for themselves. The children, the women, all this. So
elders.
The elders. Yeah, I love it. It's bringing back one of the things Christopher Renstrom said at our 2025 forecast was that 2025 was a year of the divine masculine and the focus on that. And I know, me too. And it was a really compelling and interesting part of the forecast to dive into that. And one of the things he brought up is that the masculine needs a code of honor, like they had for the round, the King Arthur round. They had the code, and that was a code that was taught to young men at a very early age. And that has not left me all year. And I work with some beautiful young men at the gym. I have like my trainer and these, and I can see it in them. This they want that, they crave that, and I love that this ingress and this transit is really going to be highlighting this aspect. I can see it coming forth even more. Yeah.
And the Cherokee, I didn't write it down, so I don't know if I'm going to say it in exact words, but the gist of it, the Cherokee have a prophecy where it says, a woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul and to the divine. And a man's highest calling is to protect woman so she can walk the earth unharmed.
Oh my God.
So he's meant to protect her, and then she's meant to awaken the divine within him. I have full body chills.
So Deborah Silverman just recently was on, or I just did a few podcasts with her, and she's doing this whole series on the tarot. And what she says is that the Empress. No, I'm sorry, the Lover's card. Oh, in modern interpretations, it's the lovers looking at each other. Yeah. But in the original one, the woman is looking up to the sky, and he's looking at her. And that's exactly what you just said. It's like she is downloading the divine information and energies, and he's looking to her for that. Yep. And oh my God. Okay. Sorry. I don't mean to derail us, but this is fascinating and I think exciting if we can use it as a call to go in this direction.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just adding, well, actually, I want to say a couple of the things. One is I want to talk about the Sabian symbol. So it's interesting because 30 Pisces, and I didn't write that one down, but I kind of remember it. 30 Pisces talks about a boy who's looking at these mountains with these faces of these elders in the mountains, and over the arc of his life, he becomes that which he idealizes, like grandfather mountain or the elders in the mountain. And then the first degree of Aries is a woman just risen from the sea. A seal is embracing her. And so it's interesting because typically people think Pisces is the feminine, Aries is the masculine, right? But it's reversed. The last degree of Pisces, you see a boy who becomes a man at the end of his life by taking on this ideal. And then the first degree of Aries, you see a woman coming out of the ocean. And I think that evokes a deeper truth that we've kind of lost touch with, so that essentially says the seal's embracing her. Well, seals are often seen as shields and protectors.
Oh,
So the seal is the divine masculine, protecting the divine feminine, embracing her as she rises out of the unconscious and is birthing herself in a new cycle. And, something I read like years ago in a book by Demetra George, whose work I absolutely love. And the book was called, I think, The Dark Moon Mysteries. She was talking about how, like the feminine, the nature of the feminine is to go and return because the moon does that. The sun never disappears, but the moon does. The moon goes dark. And so it's actually in the feminine nature to rise and fall, to reveal and be concealed. And so her return and coming out of the ocean, it's like the new cycle is starting with the feminine. And what I loved about that in her book is it kind of liberated this kind of other storyline that, oh, it's just been the oppression by patriarchy and the masculine that's made the feminine be minimized. That's also there, but that's also her nature. She comes and goes. She reveals and conceals. She's visible and then she's invisible. That's actually part of her natural cycle. So Zero Aries, essentially, it's the woman risen from the sea. It's the rising of the divine feminine from the primordial sea of creation and the unconscious. The seal is the protector and the shield, the divine masculine protecting the divine feminine as she returns. Emergence of new forms and the potentiality of consciousness comes forward with this degree. And it's, Dane Rudhyar says, it's the impulse to be. And so, and obviously a woman rising from the sea kind of evokes Venus, right? Rising from the sea and her seashell.
yeah.
So that is getting triggered. This degree is getting triggered as Saturn ingresses. And then when Saturn, goes retrograde, goes back over it, and then goes direct. And then the conjunction next year, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction is right smack on this degree. It's at 0 degrees, 45 minutes. You round up. It's the first degree. So I think that it's not just Saturn, at the Aries point, it's Saturn and Neptune. That's like a whole other, because Saturn's at the Aries point once every 30 years.
Right.
Saturn and Neptune, I probably should have done that to track. I can't tell you when the last one was, but I can guarantee you it's rare. It's not, do you know the exact?
No, but I know that whatever's happening this year in general, all the things combined are extraordinarily, I mean, like I've talked to astrologers who've gone back like 10,000 years and can't find this kind of confluence of that's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's very fascinating. Like, boy, we really came here for all this.
Hey there, Astrology Hub. I'm Catherine Plano, founder of Rise and Thrive Coaching Academy. If you've ever wanted to turn your passion for astrology into a meaningful, sustainable career, we've created the perfect pathway just for you.
And then I was listening to Astrology Hub, and then I heard you. with Amanda. And I was like, oh, now I've found the way to integrate both of them, you know, my passion for astrology and my passion for coaching.
This program is grounding my years of alternative and esoteric knowledge so that I can become a mentor for youth using the wisdom of the elements and the stars.
You have the tools, which I think you've done a great job of providing, and all the modalities, and you can articulate those conversations in a much more rounded way and reach people all over the globe, opposed to just staying in one lane.
I have gotten more confidence. I've faced myself, my fears in ways that I wanted to, but this has helped me to face those and find skills that I've been looking for with lots of good support.
It has really given me courage to step out and be confident in myself where I am and be kind to myself, just filled with joy and gratitude for where I am at this moment.
Our next cohort, designed specifically for the Astrology Hub community, begins this May. Spaces are limited, so if you're ready to take the next step towards a soul-aligned, viable career, helping others grow, heal and thrive, then visit riseandthrive.com.au/AH to reserve your spot today. And we can't wait to welcome you in.
Harmony, so can you bring in the Neptune element to this? I know the main focus we're talking about right now is Saturn into Aries, but you can't really decouple.
You
Neptune
can't.
from
You
it.
can't. And especially because when they both go retrograde in July, you know, within like 9 days of each other, they're 14 minutes apart. So that conjunction.
But land that for people who don't understand what 14 minutes apart.
Oh, so it's 1 degree is 60 minutes. And so 14 minutes means it's less than 1/4 of a degree. They're like right next to each other. Obviously, in the sky, they're not going to be on top of each other because they have different declinations. But their conjunction that's not precise until February 20th, 2026 is most certainly massively energized in July. So
if you were reading this chart without knowing that it's going to be exactly conjunct in February, would you call it conjunct in July?
Yes and no, because it's darn near close. But I'm different than some astrologers I've noticed because I really think the geometry and the precision of the math is really important, and the angular relationships. I know sometimes people think like the moment, you know, it comes within 10 degrees of your whatever, you're now having that transit. And I often see that the precise times, both personally with natal charts for me and my students and clients, but also in the mundane astrology, it's in these precise moments when it's exact that the portal opens. So I see July as like hints of what's to come. I mean, they're both stationing retrograde too, so they're going to be going backwards, but we can get like visions of that seed moment that's coming in February. And one of the ways I work with the planets, like I teach a class called Embodied Astrology where you work with the planets in your body. So Saturn is the root chakra. It's literally what roots you and grounds you to the earth. And then Neptune has actually 2 chakras it connects to. One is the higher heart, so by the thymus. The personal heart's Venus, and then Neptune is the higher heart. But Neptune's also connected to the crown because Jupiter's up at the crown, and Pisces is the rulership, you know, one of the 2 signs of rulership. And so Neptune is also at the crown. And anybody who's had like profound spiritual experience, you know, Neptune's usually involved. I remember when I was reading Carl Jung's book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, his autobiography. And this was like in my 20s. He talked about how the archetypes, at one point, like the archetypes just walked into his study. Like he had visions of these beings coming in. I was like, he's in a Neptune transit. And so I found his chart. He didn't say exact the date, but he said the season, and then he said the day of the week it was. I forget what it was. And I went and looked at the calendar for that year, and sure enough, the exact day that happened, he had an exact Neptune transit.
Wow.
So Neptune like opens you up spiritually. It also opens up the heart. So that's why they're both connected. So when Saturn, the root, and Neptune, the higher heart and crown, are aligning at this first degree of tropical zodiac, this resurrection degree, this new beginning degree, it can be profound spiritually, like setting into motion a new cycle around how do we live in this body, but also be spirit? How do we live on the earth, but also be open and receptive to heaven? How do we become the bridge, bring heaven to earth? Or that's what my website tagline says. But it also has its shadow side. Like Saturn is fear. And so Saturn with Neptune could be fear of the spiritual, fear of your heart being wide open, fear of your intuition. Neptune can be illusion, and so then there can be and also addiction and escapism, like we feel too much. And so we just like check out. So there's shadow expressions for everything. But the highest expression, I think, is quite profound. And it can be a great time for really deeply committing to deeper spiritual practices or bringing things through, like visions or dreams or creative ideas, all the Neptune stuff. But then Saturn goes, okay, what do we need to do to bring them into form? Ground them down, not leave it in the ethers so that it's like a vision, a dream, but it doesn't ever come into manifestation. And the symbol of Venus rising out of the sea, that's Saturn conjunct Neptune. The sea is Neptune, and she is the form that's coming, out of the sea. She's Saturn, the tangible, touchable being. It will be interesting. I mean, I have all my like feelings and senses, but I always love to like actually watch what's happening when it's exact, because it's like, it just always blows my mind.
So what would you say? I mean, you touched on some of the shadow elements. What do we need to be aware of within ourselves as places that we could potentially get stuck in the more shadow expression of this transit?
Well, selfishness or not having any self, sense. Either too much Aries or too little Aries. So too much Aries can be me, I'm just focusing on me. I'm, it's all about what I want and need in the moment. But then too little Aries is like, I don't have any self-concept. I don't have boundaries. I don't put myself first ever, it's like, it's two sides of the same spectrum. It's just not balanced. So being aware of that, being aware of, I actually think, it's interesting. I think it's, May 25th or 26th. I think it's the 25th. I didn't write this down, but we're having our first Chiron Eris conjunction. So Chiron, the wounded healer, and Eris, the goddess of discord and chaos, but also activist, warrior goddess. I love her. I think she's amazing. But also in Aries, and we're going to have 3 of those. Eris moves so slowly, so we're going to have 3 very, like, almost at the same degree, the 3 of them, because she doesn't, she takes forever to move through a degree.
Chiron, Aries, and
Chiron,
Eris, and Saturn.
And Saturn will get there, but not till, because it's at 25 degrees.
Okay, so they're later in Aries, but they're going to have a conjunction right after Saturn goes into Aries.
Yes. And I think one of the big things to be making sure we're working with consciously this spring, summer, into this whole transit, and then Saturn is going to evoke it too by entering Aries, is working with anger and rage. Some of us stuff it, deny it, internalize it, and stuffed, denied anger can turn into depression, disease, illness. But some of us react in it in the shadow Aries fashion. It's just like exploding, and having no capacity to contain it or to think before we speak or act. And everybody's going to have to do their own honest self check-in because we each have our own journey with that. But this kind of astrology, especially because Eris is involved, will evoke a lot of emotion. And so having practices to work with that, knowing when we're triggered, pausing, counting to 10, doing our shadow work is important. And Saturn in Aries is similar because Aries, again, is that impulse to be, but also reactivity and anger and war and, these other things that Aries is also connected to. And Saturn is not super comfortable. Saturn's actually in fall in Aries. He's exalted in Libra and in fall in Aries. And he's exalted in Libra because the containment, commitment, and maturity of Saturn goes well with partnership, right? That's what marriage is. It's like, or any type of relationship, business, whatever. It's like it's not all about you. Sometimes you have to work hard for a while before you see the benefits, or, sometimes you have to rein it in. And so it's good for Libra. For Aries, he doesn't want to be reined in. He doesn't want to be told what to do or not to do something. Like, if he's being made to do something, or if he can't do what he wants, he's pissed. And so Saturn can kind of amplify those tendencies. Saturn's in fall because of that, because Mars does not want to be bound. The irony is Mars is an exaltation in the sign of Saturn. And so when I kind of see it, they're the malefics,
Mars is in exaltation in the sign of
Saturn in Capricorn.
In Capricorn.
Mars is an exaltation in Capricorn, but Saturn is in fall in Aries.
Right.
Yeah. And so I see, to me, Mars is one of the personal planets, Sun through Mars. And then we've got the teacher social planets. And so Mars is exalted in Saturn's sign because the lower ego self can really learn to master and kind of defer, like Mr. Miyagi. Like literally, I can kind of see that Mr. Miyagi was Saturn, and the guy, what was his name? I don't remember in the movie. Daniel, he was Mars. He's Mars, getting irritated, and Mr. Miyagi Saturn. And so Mars needs to be tempered by Saturn. But Saturn, when Mars is trying to run roughshod through Saturn, or Aries, the sign of Mars, it's a harder combination. And that's why I think it's in fall. So I really think like knowing, working with our emotions, especially anger and rage, working with our ego and our will. I taught this in a few places, I think, but recently in this class I taught. So I know a lot of people will say that fire is spirit, earth is body, air is mind, and water is emotions and like soul. But actually fire is not spirit. Ether is spirit. There's a fifth element. Ether is spirit. Fire is will and drive, and also ego. And ether can infuse any of the elements and spiritualize them. So there's spiritualized fire, there's spiritualized water and earth and air, but fire is not spirit. Ether is spirit. There is the fifth element is the element of spirit. And so working with our ego, some of us need a healthier ego. We actually need to have boundaries and say no and stand up for ourselves. Some of us need to tone down the ego. And I think it's also a really great time to be intentional about what we set into motion, because this is a seed point, and we want to make sure we're seeding consciously, because it's going to grow. I mean, that's one of the laws of the universe. There's times for growing, and there's times for pruning, and times for beginning and ending. Well, this is a time for beginning. And what we begin is going to come with us for a long journey. And I remember hearing this quote, and I can't even tell you where it came from because it was a while ago, but it's like, one of those cones, I guess, but it's like, as you start, so shall you finish. And as you finish, so shall you start. So these moments of ending and beginning pretty much inform the rest of it. So if you start something off kind of crappy, you can pretty much expect the whole cycle is going to be crappy. If you end something, like maybe you do great starting and working hard, but then it's time for the end and you just run roughshod through it and you don't actually honor the ending and tie up loose ends and complete things, you're bringing that incomplete energy into your next new beginning. So it's because it's Saturn and then Neptune at 0 Aries in tropical astrology, very important to be intentional and like use that mastery of Saturn and then that inspiration, and dreams and vision of Neptune and whatever you do set into motion, like make sure you're being informed by these two, the highest aspects of these two planetary energies. Otherwise, you could set things into motion that come from fear, Saturn control, or illusion, escapism, fantasy, not, reality. Yeah.
Wow. So in order to do that, and in order to be very clear about the energy that we're bringing into this new beginning,
Well,
to me, it seems really important that we spend some time in quiet and silence, listening, receiving, being clear about what it is that we're seeding. And I mean, we're airing this episode a little bit before May 24th. We're in that right now, right? So if people can be reflecting on anything they're starting right now. It's funny, Harmony, because there were a few things I was considering starting, but I felt underneath them this energetic of like the best word I can use is sort of like grabby, like a little bit panicky. Like there's like a knowing that big new waves are coming. I'll give you a little bit of context, like especially around technology. And so there was these paths that I was considering going down, but underneath it, it was like, ooh, it's just, I don't feel clear. I don't feel totally intentional. I don't feel like I'm responding to an actual need that will put me in a place of service. Some of these things that I've learned through the years are really important.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just need to call these things off right now, for now, because because I'm not ready. The energetic behind it isn't ready.
Yes.
For other people, it might be perfect timing, but for me, I was just like, no. So, but it took a lot of like being quiet with myself to actually even tune into that, because it was very subtle and it was very surface. And so it sounds to me like each of us having a process where we're really having that reality check moment, that Saturn moment where Saturn can see through all of it. Saturn's not going to let us get away with, being integrity. So really that, am I?
And it's like when you were saying all that, I was kind of visualizing like surfing, right? It's like there's a big wave coming, but you could take the smaller wave, or maybe it's not even a wave and you're just like trying to and you're gonna have to struggle more to get it going. But if you wait for the big wave, you don't even have to work. It just takes off. So, I mean, I will say obviously we all have to do different things at different times, so you like, I love astrology, but I don't have fear around doing things if it's not the right exact aspect, if it's something that needs to happen, so it's like I work with a few energies when I'm making decisions. But if there's something that you're wanting to start that's a big deal, and if you can wait until next February, I would, because Saturn is going back and forth between the last degrees of Pisces and the first of Aries. And Neptune's doing the same thing. They both officially move into the resurrection degree of the tropical zodiac, the new beginning energy, in February of next year. But this summer, especially July, when they're so close, can be a really great incubation time of like, what do I want to internally work with, process? Now, again, if it's waiting a whole, whatever, well, it's not even a year now at this point. It's like, what is it? 9 months. It's 9 months. It's the time of a baby gestating. So you could conceive of it and gestate it and nourish it and feed it good food. And like a mama, going to her pregnancy yoga class, like the baby is growing, but it's not going to be born. till February. That would be a good timeline if you can. If you can't, I don't want people like freaking out about doing anything. But
context of what it is that you're quote unquote birthing in mind too. So for example, I'm working on a book. I really, really am aiming for October to publish it. But it is a closure for me. It is actually an ending of something. So to me, it'd be like the equivalent of ending something and closing something with the right sort of energy in order to make space for something totally new that I don't even know what it is yet next year, so, right.
Well, then that could actually, obviously you have to see your own chart, and there's a lot of different things you need to look at for mundane astrology, but the way you just described that, that's the last degrees of Pisces,
right?
It's so yeah, there's different ways to work with it, and
well, you are going to be our inner circle teacher coming up for the Leo lunation this summer, right? So we're going to get to hang out with you even more, especially like in this energy that we're talking about right now. So tell us what you're going to be teaching our inner circle members so they know what they get to look forward to.
So I'm going to be teaching about Jupiter. And it's funny because I taught about Saturn in the, what is the name?
Personal Purpose, that class that we...
Yes. So I taught Saturn in that course that's available on Astrology Hub. And then now I'll be teaching about Jupiter, which I'm super excited about. And the masterclass will be focused on Jupiter in the chart and what it means and yada, yada. And then in the forecast, I'm going to be talking a lot about the astrology of that time, because that's the solar gate of Lugnasa is happening during that time. Of course, the new moon. Jupiter will align with Sirius. And so the planet that I'm going to be teaching in the masterclass is making the most auspicious alignment it can possibly make with a fixed star during this lunar cycle. And it will be Jupiter transiting the exaltation degree. The most blessed degree Jupiter can be at in the whole zodiac is the degree where Sirius currently is by precession. So we're going to have Jupiter at the most blessed degree with the most blessed star. And it's going to be, Venus is involved too, actually. Anyhow, I've been looking forward to it. I'm like, boy, this is going to be fun. And that's why when you're like, do you want to be part of it? I was like, I need to do this. Sirius portal, because I'm so inspired. Wow. So it'll be fun. We'll have fun.
To look forward to. Harmony, anything else you want to say in closing? Anything else you think is important for us to keep in mind as we're navigating this period of time? I mean, you've given us so much, but if there's anything...
I really recommend paying attention to dreams, especially with Saturn in the last degree of Pisces. And then as he ingresses, I personally feel that dreams are, guidance from our higher self or the universe or spirit or however you conceive of it. And I personally will get dreams often during ingresses that tell me about the whole energy of the transit. That happened to me so many times for myself personally, but also like I'll get collective dreams. So pay attention to your dreams.
You keep a dream journal, write them down in the morning, those kind of practices. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. This has been so good. Like, just so juicy. There's so many different tendrils people can take into their lives. I hope you all have found it as helpful and inspiring as I did. And I just want to thank you all for being here for it. Thank you for tuning into this channel. Thank you for being a part of our Astrology Hub community. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life. As Harmony said, we don't have to, be ruled by it or allow. I see sometimes people get afraid of the astrology. I hope that when you leave our podcast, you feel inspired and informed and feeling capable to make great decisions for yourself. So that's always the intention with these kinds of forecasts that are giving you real-time transit information. It's like, get the information, become empowered, and make great decision for yourself, for your own path. So thank you for being here for all that. And I can't wait to catch you on the next episode. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.